The nurse looked at me like she didn't know whether to feel angry or sorry for me. "Ma'am," she said carefully, lowering her voice, "your children were alone in the waiting room for almost 40 minutes. At first I honestly thought I was still groggy from anesthesia. I blinked at her slowly while the hospital lights burned into my eyes. My throat felt dry. My stomach felt like somebody had carved straight through it, which technically they had. And somewhere in the distance I could hear machines beeping steadily beside my bed. "What?" I whispered. The nurse glanced toward the doorway before looking back at me again. "Your son got scared and started crying. Another patient's family came to get us because they couldn't find an adult with them." For a second my brain just stopped working. I remember staring at the ceiling tiles, trying to make sense of what she was saying. Because my parents were supposed to be there. They promised me they'd stay. I don't understand," I said. "My mom and dad were with them." The nurse hesitated. "They left shortly before your surgery." And there was that feeling. The same feeling I'd had since I was probably 10 years old. Like somebody quietly reached into my chest and reminded me exactly where I stood in my family. They always second. I turned my head slowly and saw my son Mason asleep in a chair near the window, curled up awkwardly under a thin hospital blanket. My daughter Ava sat beside him holding a juice cup with both hands, trying so hard to look brave that it nearly destroyed me. The second she saw my eyes open, she stood up fast. "Mommy." Her voice cracked. And that's when I started crying. Not because of the surgery. Not because of the pain. Because my children had been abandoned in a hospital waiting room while I was unconscious. So my parents could take my younger sister to a hair appointment. And somehow, deep down, I think a part of me already knew they would choose her. I'm Danielle Carter. I'm 34 years old, divorced, and the mother of 2 kids who honestly deserve better than the family I came from. I work as a receptionist at a pediatric clinic in Columbus, Ohio. Nothing glamorous. Most days I answer phones, schedule appointments, calm nervous parents, and survive on reheated coffee and pure exhaustion. But if you asked my family about me, they'd probably describe me with one sentence. "Danielle's the strong one." For years, I thought that was supposed to be a compliment. Now I realize it was just an excuse people used when they wanted to give less to me. Less attention. Less support. Less care. Because apparently strong people don't need anybody. Meanwhile, my younger sister Brianna always needed everybody. Brianna was 29, dramatic, emotional, beautiful in that effortless Instagram kind of way, and somehow constantly in the middle of a crisis that became the entire family's emergency. She fought with a boyfriend my parents rushed over. She had stress at work, my mom stayed on the phone with her for hours. He cried, the world stopped turning. But when my marriage collapsed, my dad told me, "You'll figure it out. You always do." And I did. Because I had no choice. I raised my kids mostly alone after the divorce. Their father, Tyler, wasn't a bad man exactly, but we were better apart than together. We co-parented decently enough, but he traveled constantly for work, which meant most responsibilities landed on me. School pickups, doctor appointments, nightmares at 2 a.m., bills, everything. So when my doctor told me I needed gallbladder surgery after months of pain, I was terrified, not even of the operation itself, but of how I was supposed to manage everything afterward. And for once, just once, I let myself believe my parents would show up for me. My mom even sounded offended when I asked. "Danielle, of course we'll help," she said. "You're our daughter." I actually remember feeling guilty for doubting her. That was the stupid part. A week before surgery, my mother came over while I folded laundry at the kitchen table. "You really should let us do more for you," she said while sipping coffee. I almost laughed. Because where exactly had this version of my mother been hiding for the last 15 years? Instead I just smiled tiredly. "Well, thank you." She glanced around my apartment like she was inspecting how hard my life had become. The soccer cleats near the door. The stack of unpaid medical bills on the counter. The crock-pot cooking dinner at 10 in the morning because I wouldn't have time later. "You work too hard," she said. I wanted to say somebody has to, but I didn't. That's another thing about being the reliable daughter. You swallow a lot. A few days later, Brianna called me while I was driving home from work. "Can you believe Mom still hasn't finalized the brunch menu for my bridal shower?" she complained dramatically. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. My surgery was in 48 hours. And somehow we were discussing mini quiches. "That sounds stressful," I said flatly. Oh my God, and don't even get me started on the hairstylist situation. I remember pulling into my apartment parking lot while she kept talking. Not once, did she ask how I was feeling. Finally, I interrupted softly. I'm nervous about Friday. There was a pause. Then she sighed. Danielle, you'll be fine. It's routine surgery. Routine. Funny how people call something routine when it isn't happening to them. The night before surgery, my kids climbed into bed with me. Ava rubbed my arm gently. Are you gonna die tomorrow? I smiled immediately even though my chest tightened. No, baby. But what if something goes wrong? I looked at her little face in the dark and realized she was trying so hard not to cry. So I pulled both kids close and kissed their foreheads. Grandma and Grandpa are gonna stay with you the whole time, I promised. And then Mommy's coming home. At the time I believed it myself. That's probably the part that hurts the most now. Not that my parents left, but that I defended them before they did. The morning of my surgery started at 5:30 in the morning with panic already sitting in my chest. I barely slept the night before. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept imagining worst-case scenarios. Complications. Bad news. My kids scared and confused without me. By 6:30, I was standing in my kitchen trying to force myself to drink tea while Ava and Mason sat at the table eating waffles. Mason swung his legs under the chair. Can I bring my dinosaur to the hospital? Of course, I said softly. Ava studied me carefully over the rim of her orange juice cup. She had always been sensitive. Too observant for her age. You look scared, she whispered. I crouched beside her chair and brushed hair away from her face. I'm okay. You're lying. That nearly broke me right there. Because she was right. I was terrified. Not just of surgery. Of everything. Of being needed by everyone while secretly falling apart myself. At 7:15 my parents arrived. My mother walked in carrying a giant purse and iced coffee like this was a normal casual morning. My dad followed behind her already checking his phone. Well, my mom said brightly, everybody ready? I remember noticing how calm they looked. How easy everything seemed for them. For me it felt like the biggest day of my life. For them it felt like an errand between breakfast and lunch. Still I told myself not to overthink it. They showed up. That mattered. Right? The drive to the hospital was quiet except for Mason talking about dinosaurs from the back seat. My dad laughed along while my mom scrolled through wedding photos Brianna had posted the night before. She really picked the perfect venue, my mother said proudly. I stared out the passenger window. Not one question about how I felt. Not one. When we arrived at the hospital, everything started moving fast. Paperwork. Insurance cards. Nurses asking questions. Consent forms. I tried staying calm for the kids, but the second they put the hospital bracelet around my wrist, reality hit me hard. I was shaking when the nurse led us toward pre-op. My mother finally noticed. Oh honey, she said casually, touching my shoulder. You're making this bigger than it is. That sentence sat in my stomach like a stone. Because maybe she was right. Maybe my problem was always that I expected too much from people. A nurse named Carla helped settle me into the pre-op room. She was probably in her 50s with tired eyes and the kindest voice imaginable. You've got family with you? She asked. Yes, I said quickly. My parents are watching my kids. Carla smiled warmly. Good. Then you can focus on yourself for a few hours. I wanted to believe that so badly. Around 8:45 the anesthesiologist came in to explain everything. My kids sat quietly near the corner coloring on hospital paper while my parents listened half attentively. Then my mother's phone rang. I saw her face change immediately. Brianna, she answered. Even from my bed I could hear my sister panicking loudly through the speaker. Mom, where are you? My mother stood up quickly. We're at the hospital with Danielle. No, you don't understand. Brianna snapped. The salon moved my appointment up and if I miss this trial, I won't have time before the engagement shoot. I closed my eyes slowly. Oh, please no. My father sighed heavily like he already knew where this conversation was going. My mother lowered her voice. Sweetheart, Danielle's surgery starts soon. And then Brianna said the sentence I don't think I'll ever forget. Well, she's asleep during surgery anyway. Silence. Actual silence. I looked at my parents waiting for one of them to say absolutely not. Waiting for someone to act like leaving two small children alone at a hospital was insane. Instead, my father rubbed his forehead. "What time is the appointment?" he asked. I remember my entire body going cold. "Dad," I said quietly. He looked at me like I was the one creating tension. "Brianna's wedding is in 3 weeks." I stared at him. "And my surgery is today." My mother immediately stepped into peacemaker mode, the role she'd played my entire life whenever Brianna hurt somebody. "Danielle, honey, will only be gone a little while." "A little while?" I repeated. "I'm about to go into surgery. We'll be back before you wake up." My voice cracked. "What about the kids?" My dad glanced toward Ava and Mason sitting quietly in the corner. "They'll be fine." That sentence still makes me angry when I think about it. They'll be fine. Like my children were backpacks someone could leave in a waiting room. Like this entire situation was normal. I looked at my mother desperately. "Please don't leave them here." And for just 1 second I saw hesitation in her face. But then Brianna started crying dramatically through the phone again. And just like that, my mother folded. "We can't abandon her before the wedding," she whispered. I actually laughed at that. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. "You're abandoning me." The room went completely quiet. Even the nurse looked uncomfortable. My father's expression hardened immediately. "Don't start with the guilt trip." Guilt trip. I was hours away from having surgery and begging my parents not to leave my children alone in a hospital. And somehow I was still the difficult one. Carla, the nurse, stepped in carefully. "Sir, hospital policy requires minors to remain supervised." My father waved his hand dismissively. "We'll be back shortly." Then he looked at me. "You've always been independent, Danielle. Brianna's the emotional one." There was the sentence that explained my entire childhood in one line. Not loved less. Needed less. Expected to survive things quietly. My throat burned so badly I couldn't even speak anymore. Ava walked over beside my bed. "Grandma," she asked softly. "Are you leaving?" My mother crouched down quickly and smoothed Ava's hair. "Just for a little bit, sweetheart." Ava looked confused. "But Mommy's scared." That nearly shattered me. Because my 7-year-old noticed my fear more than my own parents did. My mother kissed Ava's forehead quickly, avoiding eye contact with me entirely. Then they left. Just like that. I watched the door close behind them while my chest felt so tight I thought I might stop breathing before surgery even started. Carla muttered softly under her breath after they walked out. "I'm so sorry." And for some reason hearing kindness from a stranger hurt worse than cruelty from family. Because it reminded me what basic care was supposed to feel like. A few minutes later they started wheeling me toward the operating room. I turned my head desperately trying to smile at my kids. "Be brave for Mommy, okay?" Mason nodded, clutching his dinosaur. Ava looked terrified. "Promise you'll come back?" My eyes filled instantly. "I promise." Then the doors closed between us. And the last thing I remember before anesthesia took over was wondering if my children were sitting out there alone already. When I woke up, the first thing I felt was pain. Not sharp pain exactly. More like my entire body had been hollowed out and stuffed with concrete. My mouth was dry. My vision blurred in and out while fluorescent lights glowed above me. Then I heard a voice. "Danielle? Can you hear me?" I turned my head slowly and saw Nurse Carla standing beside the bed. And immediately before I even fully woke up, I asked the only thing that mattered. "Pie kids?" Her expression changed instantly. Not panic. Not confusion. Pity. And somehow that was worse. "They're okay," she said gently. "Your ex-husband picked them up." I frowned weakly. "Tyler." Carla nodded. I tried pushing myself up too fast and instantly regretted it. Pain shot through my stomach hard enough to make me gasp. "What happened?" Carla pulled the chair closer to the bed before sitting down carefully. "About 30 minutes after your parents left, your son got upset because he couldn't find them. Your daughter tried calming him down, but eventually they started walking around the waiting area looking for an adult." I closed my eyes immediately. "Oh God." "They were scared," Carla continued softly. "Another family came to get us." I felt tears sliding sideways into my hair. Not dramatic crying. Not loud sobbing. Just silent humiliation. The kind that sits heavy in your chest because there's no excuse left to make for the people who hurt you. "How long were they alone?" Carla hesitated. "Long enough." That answer told me everything. I covered my face with my hands. I kept picturing Ava trying to act brave for Mason. I knew exactly how she would have looked too, holding his hand tightly while pretending not to be scared herself. Because that's what older daughters do in families like mine. They become little adults way too early. The door opened quietly behind us. I looked up expecting my parents. Instead, Tyler walked in. The second I saw his face, I knew he was furious. Not annoyed. Not irritated. Furious. His jaw was tight. His shirt looked wrinkled like he threw it on in a rush. Mason's dinosaur was sticking halfway out of his coat pocket. "You're awake," he said. I nodded slowly. "Where are the kids?" "At my place." Relief hit me so hard I almost cried again. "Thank you." Tyler looked away for a second before exhaling sharply. "What the hell happened, Danielle?" There was the question I didn't even know how to answer. Because how do you explain to another adult that your parents abandoned your children at a hospital for your sister's hair appointment? Even saying it out loud sounded insane. "They left," I whispered. "I know they left." His voice got tighter. "The nurse called your emergency contact because nobody could find an adult with the kids." Every word felt like another layer of shame pressing onto my chest. Tyler rubbed his forehead hard. "Mason was crying so hard he threw up." That sentence destroyed me. I turned my face away instantly because I couldn't handle the image. "He thought something happened to you," Tyler said quietly now. Ava was trying to calm him down by herself. I started crying again. Not because Tyler was yelling. Because he wasn't. Anger I could handle. Disappointment hurt worse. "You trusted them," he said finally. And the terrible part was, I had. Despite everything. Despite years of being overlooked. Despite every broken promise. A part of me still wanted my parents to become the people I needed them to be. Tyler sat down heavily near the bed. I almost called the police. I blinked at him. "What? You don't leave children alone in a hospital waiting room." His voice lowered carefully. "What if something had happened?" I didn't answer because there wasn't one. No excuse. No explanation. Nothing that made this okay. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed on the tray beside me. "Mom calling." I stared at the screen. Tyler laughed once under his breath. Not amused. Just disgusted. "You gonna answer?" Honestly, part of me still wanted to. That's the sad thing about family. Even after they hurt you, some part of you keeps hoping the next conversation will finally sound different. I picked up. "Hi, Mom." "Oh good, you're awake," she said brightly. Brightly. Like we were discussing brunch plans. "How are you feeling?" I couldn't even process the question. "You left my children alone." Pause. Then immediate defensiveness. "Danielle, they were not alone." I actually stared at the wall in disbelief. Yes, they were. We were gone less than an hour. The hospital had to call Tyler because nobody knew where you were. My mother sighed dramatically. "I really don't think screaming helps right now." Screaming. I wasn't even raising my voice. That's another thing manipulative people do. They act like your pain is aggression because it's easier than admitting guilt. "Mom," I whispered, "Ava thought I might die today." Silence. Finally she softened slightly. "Well, everything worked out." Everything worked out. That sentence changed something inside me permanently. Because that was the moment I realized my family judged pain entirely based on who was experiencing it. If Brianna cried over flowers, it was an emergency. If I cried over abandonment, it was drama. I hung up before she finished talking. Tyler watched me carefully. "You okay?" "No," I admitted. And it felt strange saying that out loud. Because I was usually the one insisting I was fine. Always fine. Even when I clearly wasn't. The next 2 days were awful. Recovery hurt more than I expected. I couldn't lift anything. I couldn't move without pain shooting through my stomach. Tyler kept the kids longer than planned because I physically couldn't take care of them alone yet. Meanwhile, my parents acted like the entire hospital situation had already expired. My mother texted me recipes. My father sent a thumbs-up emoji after surgery. And Brianna? She sent me a selfie from her hair trial. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a caption underneath. "Wedding hair is finally perfect." I stared at the picture for nearly a full minute. Then I did something I'd never done before. I didn't respond. A few days later, my mother came over unannounced carrying soup. She walked into my apartment acting completely normal while I sat carefully on the couch with a heating pad against my stomach. "How are my grandbabies?" she asked casually. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time in my life, I stopped trying to protect her from the consequences of her own behavior. "You left them alone." She froze slightly. "Oh, Danielle." "No. Don't, oh Danielle me." She set the soup down slowly. "We already talked about this." "No," I said quietly. "You explained it. That's not the same thing." Her face hardened immediately. "You have no idea how stressful this wedding has been." I almost laughed again. There was still about Brianna. Always about Brianna. She needed support that morning. And I didn't? My mother crossed her arms. "You're stronger than your sister." I stared at her for a long time after she said that. Then finally I whispered something I don't think she expected to hear. "I'm tired of paying for that." My mother looked genuinely shocked after I said it. Like the possibility of me finally reaching a limit had never occurred to her before. For a few seconds neither of us spoke. The only sound in the apartment was the dishwasher humming quietly in the kitchen. Then she sighed and sat down across from me like I was being unreasonable. "Danielle, families go through hard moments." I stared at her. Hard moments. A hard moment was forgetting to pick somebody up from the airport. A hard moment was burning Thanksgiving dinner. Leaving my children alone in a hospital while I was unconscious wasn't a hard moment. It was a choice. And the worst part was she still didn't fully understand why it mattered. "I trusted you," I said quietly. "You can still trust us." That sentence actually made something cold settle inside me. Because trust without accountability means absolutely nothing. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed beside me. "Brianna." Of course. I ignored it immediately. My mother noticed. "She's upset with you." I looked at her in disbelief. "She's upset with me?" "She feels like you're punishing everyone right before the wedding." There was again. Not concern for me. Concern for the wedding. Concern for Brianna. Concern for appearances. I leaned back carefully against the couch cushion, trying not to aggravate the pain in my stomach. "You know what's interesting?" I asked softly. My mother frowned slightly. "What?" "If I had done what you did, if I'd left Brianna's future children alone somewhere while she was in surgery," I paused, "you would never forgive me." Her expression tightened instantly because she knew I was right. But people like my mother rarely admit things directly. Instead they redirect. "This family has done a lot for you." And there was the invisible debt. The thing they held over my head any time I dared acknowledge hurt. My parents helped me with groceries during my divorce once. They babysat occasionally. My father loaned me money years ago when Mason was born early and medical bills buried me alive. And somehow those things became permanent proof that I wasn't allowed to feel abandoned. "I've spent my whole life being grateful for crumbs," I said quietly. My mother stood up immediately. "That's unfair." "No," I replied. "What's unfair is expecting me to accept less love because I handle pain better." For the first time during that conversation she looked uncomfortable enough to leave. "Good." She grabbed her purse sharply. "I think you're emotional right now because of the surgery." That almost made me laugh. Women get dismissed so easily once people decide emotions make our experiences invalid. I watched her walk toward the door. Then right before she left, I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest for years. "Did you ever actually see me?" She stopped moving. Her back stayed toward me. And after a long silence she answered in the quietest voice imaginable. "You never needed us the way Brianna did." Then she walked out. I sat there stunned long after the door closed. Because parents don't realize how dangerous those kinds of beliefs become. When one child is constantly treated as fragile and the other is treated as durable, eventually the durable child breaks silently. And nobody notices until she stops coming back. About a week later I attended Brianna's bridal shower. Honestly, I didn't want to go. But Ava had already made her an art project with fake flowers and glitter glued everywhere, and I couldn't stand the thought of disappointing my daughter. So I went. Big mistake. The shower was held at this upscale restaurant downtown with white decorations everywhere and giant floral centerpieces that probably cost more than my rent. The second I walked in I felt it. That awkward tension people create when they know something happened but don't want to discuss it openly. My Aunt Linda hugged me too tightly. "You feeling better?" she asked carefully. "Getting there." Then came the pity smile. I hated the pity smile. Brianna floated around the room in a white dress, acting like she was already royalty. Every conversation somehow circled back to her wedding stress. Her seating chart stress. Her honeymoon stress. Her makeup trial stress. I sat quietly near the back sipping water and trying not to pull my stitches, laughing at how ridiculous it all felt now. Then my mother stood up to make a toast. Of course she did. To Brianna, she said emotionally, raising her champagne glass. Our beautiful daughter who brings so much light into every room. Everyone clapped. Then she added something that made my stomach twist. And thank you to everyone who's helped keep things positive during this stressful season. Positive. Interesting word choice. Because what she really meant was obedient. Don't ruin the mood. Don't mention the hospital. Don't make Brianna uncomfortable. My cousin Rachel caught my eye across the room immediately. She gave me this tiny look that basically said, "Are you hearing this too?" I looked down at my drink. Then Brianna suddenly spoke up from across the room. "I'm just glad we moved past unnecessary drama." The room went quiet instantly. My chest tightened. There it was. She wanted a public performance. She wanted me silently put back into my place. I looked up slowly. What drama exactly? Brianna blinked innocently. Oh, come on, Danielle. You've been cold to everybody for weeks. I actually laughed softly because the audacity was unbelievable. You left my children alone at a hospital. My mother jumped in immediately. Danielle, not here. No, I said calmly. Actually, here is perfect. You could feel the discomfort spreading through the room now. Forks stopping. Eyes shifting. People pretending not to listen while listening to every word. Brianna crossed her arms dramatically. You're seriously still doing this? Still doing this? Like trauma had an expiration date. My surgery was 2 weeks ago, I said quietly. My son threw up because he thought something happened to me. Oh my God, Brianna snapped. You always make everything so intense. That sentence did it. Not because it hurt. Because suddenly everything became crystal clear. Every birthday where I got told to be mature. Every holiday where Brianna's emotions controlled the room. Every family event where my role was keeping peace while she got to keep priority. I looked around slowly at all the relatives, pretending this dynamic was normal. Then I stood up carefully despite the pain still pulling at my stomach. You know what's funny? I said softly. I actually believed if something serious ever happened to me, my family would finally choose me first. Nobody spoke. Brianna rolled her eyes. So dramatic. And before I could answer, Cousin Rachel suddenly spoke from the far side of the table. No, she said coldly. Actually, Danielle's underreacting. That changed the energy instantly. Because Rachel almost never got involved in family conflict. And everybody knew it. The room went completely silent after Rachel said that. Even Brianna looked caught off guard. Rachel slowly set her wine glass down and leaned back in her chair. I've stayed out of this long enough, she said calmly. But leaving children alone at a hospital during surgery is insane. My mother immediately stiffened. Rachel, this is family business. Rachel gave a short, humorless laugh. Exactly. And this family's been excusing terrible behavior for years. You could practically feel the tension crawling across the room now. My father finally spoke up from the other side of the table. We're not doing this today. But nobody was listening to him anymore. Because once someone finally says the truth out loud in a family built on silence, everything shifts. Brianna scoffed dramatically. This is unbelievable. Danielle's turned everybody against me over one misunderstanding. One misunderstanding? Rachel repeated. I could see my sister getting irritated now because Rachel wasn't following the script. Usually people back down the second Brianna got emotional. Rachel didn't. You weren't the one recovering from surgery, Rachel said. And you weren't the one sitting alone scared at 7 years old. Brianna crossed her arms. I didn't tell them to leave the kids alone. No, I said quietly for the first time. You just made sure your appointment mattered more. Her face snapped toward me. There you go again trying to make me the villain. And suddenly I realized something important. Brianna genuinely believed this. That was the scary part. She honestly thought wanting attention excused everything else. My mother stepped forward quickly before the situation got worse. Everybody needs to calm down. That sentence almost made me laugh. Because, calm down, in my family always meant Danielle. Please stop making everybody uncomfortable by telling the truth. I picked up my purse slowly. You know what? Forget it. Danielle, my mother started. No. I'm tired. And I was. Not physically. Soul-level tired. Tired of minimizing my pain so other people could stay comfortable. Tired of pretending favoritism wasn't happening when everyone in the room could clearly see it. Tired of carrying emotional responsibility for people who never carried any for me. I left the bridal shower early that afternoon. And honestly, nobody came after me. Not my mother. Not my father. Not even Brianna. That hurt more than the argument itself. Because deep down, some childish part of me still expected someone to choose me eventually. That night Rachel came over with takeout and wine. The kids were asleep already and my apartment finally felt quiet for the first time in weeks. Rachel sat cross-legged on my couch shaking her head. I should have said something years ago. I looked at her tiredly. About what? Everything. She handed me a container of noodles. Danielle, this family trained you to survive emotional neglect so well that everybody mistakes it for strength. That sentence hit hard because it felt painfully true. Rachel had always been older and sharper than the rest of us. She became a family attorney years ago and learned how to read people fast. You know what your problem is? She asked. I'm sure you're about to tell me. You still think if you explain yourself correctly enough, they'll suddenly understand your pain. I looked down quietly because she was right again. But they don't want understanding, Rachel continued softly. They want comfort. And your role has always been making life easier for everybody else. I leaned back slowly against the couch. I don't even know who I am outside that role anymore. Rachel studied me carefully for a moment. Then maybe this is the moment you figure it out. I didn't answer immediately. Instead I stared toward my laptop sitting on the kitchen counter. The one thing my family barely knew anything about. For the past year and a half after the kids went to sleep, I'd been quietly building an online scheduling system for small medical offices. Nothing flashy. Just software that helped clinics manage cancellations, patient reminders and appointment flow better. I started it after noticing how badly organized most clinics were at my receptionist job. At first it was just freelance work. Then it became bigger. And bigger. Recently, a healthcare company in North Carolina had offered to partner with me officially. I hadn't told my family yet. Honestly, I think part of me wanted to surprise them someday. Wanted them to finally look at me differently. Now I realized how sad that was. Because why was I still chasing approval from people determined not to see me clearly? Rachel followed my eyes toward the laptop. You still haven't told them? I shook my head. No. Good. I frowned slightly. Good. Because this needs to belong to you first. I sat quietly thinking about that for a while. Then Rachel asked carefully, can I tell you something else you probably don't know? I looked over. Your parents dipped into the kids' savings account. The room went still. What? Rachel's expression hardened. Your father mentioned it accidentally a few months ago. I felt my stomach drop instantly. What are you talking about? They used some of the account your grandmother started for Ava and Mason. I stared at her in disbelief. No, they wouldn't. Rachel held my gaze carefully. They already did. I felt physically cold all over. My grandmother had started those savings accounts before she died. Small amounts at first. Birthday money. Holiday checks. Little investments over time. It wasn't massive wealth. But it mattered. It was supposed to help my kids someday. For what? I whispered. Rachel hesitated. Then she said the words that finally broke whatever loyalty I still had left. Brianna's wedding venue. I actually stopped breathing for a second. You're lying. I wish I was. Anger flooded through me so fast it almost made me dizzy. Not loud anger. The dangerous kind. The kind that arrives calm. They stole from my children? Rachel nodded carefully. I don't know exact numbers yet. I stood up too quickly and winced from the pain in my abdomen. But I barely felt it anymore. Because suddenly the hospital incident wasn't isolated. It was a pattern. A lifetime pattern. Take from Danielle. She'll survive it. Give to Brianna. She needs it more. I grabbed my phone immediately. Rachel stood too. Danielle. No. I was already dialing my father. He answered on the third ring sounding annoyed. What? Straight to irritation. No hello. No concern. I swallowed hard. Did you take money from Ava and Mason's account? Silence. Then, who told you that? That was enough confirmation. My vision blurred instantly with rage. You took money from my children? My father exhaled heavily like I was exhausting him. It was temporary. For what? Another pause. Then finally, the wedding costs got out of hand. Actually laughed. A sharp, broken laugh I didn't even recognize as my own. You stole from my kids for centerpieces and cocktails? It wasn't stealing. It absolutely was. His voice turned cold immediately. Watch your tone. There was again. Control. Deflection. 40. Anything except accountability. Then he said the sentence that changed everything forever. Brianna has one wedding. Your kids still have time. Your kids still have time. I don't think my father understood what that sentence did to me. Because in that moment, every excuse I'd ever made for my family finally collapsed. Not cracked. Collapsed. I stood there in my kitchen holding the phone so tightly my hand hurt while Rachel watched me carefully from across the room. My children are not backup plans for Brianna's life, I said quietly. My father sighed like I was being irrational again. We were going to replace the money. When? We just needed flexibility. Flexibility. Interesting word for stealing from your grandchildren. You didn't even ask me. We knew you'd overreact. That sentence almost made me smile. Because suddenly everything was so clear. My family didn't hide things because they feared my reactions. They hid things because they benefited from my silence. And they genuinely believed I would keep absorbing pain forever. Well, I said softly, that was a mistake. Then I hung up. Rachel looked at me carefully. You okay? And honestly, for the first time in weeks, I was not happy, not calm, but awake. Like something inside me had finally stopped begging for love and started protecting itself instead. Over the next 2 weeks I moved quietly. That's the funny thing about people who underestimate you. They usually don't notice when you stop playing your assigned role. I met with Rachel privately and reviewed everything involving the children's accounts. Turns out my grandmother had made me the legal co-manager years earlier before she passed. My parents assumed I'd never check. They assumed wrong. At the same time, the partnership offer from North Carolina became official. The healthcare company wanted me full-time to help expand patient scheduling systems across multiple clinics. The salary nearly doubled what I made in Ohio. Benefits. Remote flexibility. A fresh start. And for once in my life, I made a decision without asking anybody else what they thought. I accepted. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Brianna. I just started planning. New apartment. New schools. New life. Meanwhile, my family stayed completely focused on the wedding. My mother sent group texts about flower deliveries. My father acted like nothing happened. And Brianna kept posting glamorous countdown videos online with captions about family love and support. Every time I saw them, I felt less sad. Less angry. Mostly just done. Then came the rehearsal dinner. Honestly, I almost didn't go. But Rachel convinced me otherwise. You deserve to stop leaving rooms like you're the one who did something wrong, she said. So I went. The dinner was held at this expensive rooftop restaurant downtown. Everyone dressed beautifully. String lights everywhere. Fake smiles everywhere else. I wore a simple dark blue dress and kept my hair natural. No performance. No pretending. The second I walked in, I could feel my mother watching me nervously. Because deep down she knew something had changed. People sense when they lose control of someone. Dinner started awkwardly polite. Small talk. Wedding speeches. Forced laughter. Then finally my father stood up holding a champagne glass. I just want tonight to be peaceful, he announced carefully while glancing directly at me. There was the warning disguised as a toast. Rachel leaned toward me slightly. You don't have to protect them anymore. Something about hearing that released years of pressure inside my chest. Then Brianna spoke up from across the table. I think everybody's ready to move past negativity. I looked at her calmly. Really? She smiled tightly. Yes. Some people have dragged things out long enough. And that was it. That was the moment. Not explosive. Not dramatic. Just final. I set my glass down carefully. You want honesty? I asked quietly. The whole table went still immediately. My mother whispered, Danielle. No, I said calmly. We're doing honesty tonight. Brianna rolled her eyes already. I ignored her. I was lying in a hospital bed terrified, I began. My children were scared. And while I was being wheeled into surgery, my family decided a hair appointment mattered more. Silence spread across the table instantly. Real silence. Not discomfort. Shame. I looked directly at my father. Mason cried so hard he got sick. Then my mother. Ava thought I might die alone. My mother's eyes filled immediately. Good. They should. For weeks, I continued softly, you all acted like I was dramatic for being hurt. But the truth is, none of you wanted accountability because deep down you knew it was wrong. Brianna crossed her arms defensively. Oh my God, are we seriously doing this at my wedding event? I looked at her for a long moment. And suddenly I didn't hate her anymore. I just saw her clearly. A person raised to believe her wants mattered more than other people's pain. No, I said quietly. Actually, this stopped being about your wedding a long time ago. Then I reached into my purse and slid copies of the account records onto the table. My father's face changed instantly. Rachel stayed silent beside me. What's this? My mother whispered. Proof, I answered calmly. That money was taken from my children's accounts without permission. Brianna looked confused. My father looked terrified. And for the first time in my entire life, he had no control over the room. Several relatives started quietly reading the paperwork. Nobody spoke. Then my Aunt Linda finally whispered. Oh my God. My father tried recovering quickly. We were replacing it. You shouldn't have touched it. My voice stayed calm the entire time. That's what scared them most. I wasn't emotional anymore. I was finished. Then came the final part. The kids and I are moving to North Carolina in 3 weeks. Every head turned toward me. My mother blinked rapidly. What? I accepted a business partnership. Brianna stared openly now. You. I almost laughed at that. Yes. Me. The daughter nobody bothered looking at closely. I built a medical scheduling company, I said simply. It's doing very well. Nobody knew what to say. Because suddenly the struggling, dependable daughter they underestimated for years didn't fit the story they created about me anymore. My mother's voice cracked. You're taking the kids away? No, I corrected gently. I'm building a life where they don't grow up believing love means being ignored. That sentence hit hard enough nobody spoke afterward. Not even Brianna. Especially not Brianna. And honestly, that silence felt like freedom. 3 months later my life looked completely different. The kids loved North Carolina. Ava became more confident almost immediately. Mason stopped asking why Grandma barely called anymore. Me. I finally learned what peace feels like when you stop fighting for a seat at a table that only values you for what you sacrifice. My parents called more often after we moved. Apologies started appearing slowly. Carefully. But apologies hit differently once you no longer need them to survive emotionally. I stopped answering every call. Stopped fixing every relationship. Stopped carrying guilt that never belonged to me. And somewhere along the way I realized something important. The strongest thing I ever did wasn't surviving how my family treated me. It was finally refusing to keep teaching my children that love should hurt. So if you've ever been the responsible one, the overlooked one, the daughter expected to carry everything quietly while somebody else got protected, I need you to hear this. Being strong does not mean accepting disrespect forever. And sometimes the people who lose access to your life are the same people who never believed you'd walk away in the first place. If this story connected with you, share your experience down in the comments. I read more of them than you probably realize. And if you enjoy real emotional stories about family, healing, and learning your worth, don't forget to subscribe. Because sometimes hearing somebody else finally choose themselves gives us permission to do the same.